Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the debate of the Oops, let me turn on my camera so you can see me. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the debate of the candidates for the Central Arizona Water Conservation District Board. There are 14 candidates seeking your vote for 5 seats in the general election on November 8th. The Central Arizona Water Conservation District election is a nonpartisan election. My name is Penny Sharon, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Arizona. Joining me today are our 2 experienced moderators, Jody Liggett and Candace Englert. Both are proud members of the Metro Phoenix Local League. The League is an all-volunteer, nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes any political candidates. Our mission is to empower voters. We envision a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate, where every citizen is registered, informed on all candidates and issues, and votes. Since 1920, the League has provided education and advocacy on issues of the day. A few words about the role of the League as a moderator to the debates and the debates themselves. The League provides extensive training for members who serve as moderators to ensure that we strictly adhere to the League's commitments to impartiality and nonpartisanship. Members of the League of Women Voters of Arizona wrote the debate questions with input from the membership, partners, and communities in the local League service areas. The purpose of this debate is for each audience member to hear the candidates explain why they would be the best choice for serving on the Central Arizona Water Conservation District Board. Our goals for this debate are fairness, civility, and engagement. I will now turn the debate over to our expert moderators, Jody Liggett and Candace Englert. Jody?
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our debate. Before we begin, I would like to start by telling the audience a little bit about the Central Arizona Water Conservation District. The CAWCD district is a multi-county special purpose district created by Arizona law. The CAWCD is governed by an unpaid 15-member board of directors elected for staggered 6-year terms by voters in each of its 3 member counties. 10 members elected from Maricopa County, 4 from Pima, and 1 from Pinal. The CAWCD operates and maintains the Central Arizona Project, CAP, which is the state's largest renewable water provider, delivering up to 1.6 million acre-feet of service water from the Colorado River each year. As a wholesale raw water provider, the CAP delivers water to more than 50 cities and private water companies that collectively serve about 5 million people. That's 80% of the state's population. The CAP also provides water for 350,000 acres of irrigated agriculture land and 11 Native American tribes. So reminding you again, 14 candidates are seeking your vote for 5 seats in the general election on November 8th. The candidates elected in this November will serve a 6-year term. All of the candidates were invited to this debate. Not everyone accepted the invitation. You will be hearing from the 8 candidates who did accept. The Central Arizona Water Conservation District election is nonpartisan. The candidates who either did not respond or declined our invitation are Lisa Bullington, Alan Delaney, Jason Lundgren, Donovan Neese, Jim Peterson, and Barbara Sago. A little housekeeping. As you know, we're in a webinar and we've got a slide deck and all the important information will be on those. Each of our 8 candidates will be asked 6 questions. Therefore, we won't have time for live questions from the audience. Now, I'd like to introduce our timekeepers and helpers for this evening. Bridget Fitzgerald and Andrea Smolsley from the League have the role of keeping us all on time. They have indicators on our slides. a 30-second sign, a 10-second sign, and a stop sign. When you see the stop sign, candidates, please end your sentence immediately. I promise the audience will forgive you. You will be automatically muted at the end of your sentence. So the format for this afternoon is in 3 parts. Part 1 is our opening question. I will call on each candidate to answer the opening question. Each candidate has 90 seconds to respond. Part 2 is prepared questions. The League of Women Voters has 6 questions prepared for the debate. Each candidate will have no longer than 1 minute to respond. When deemed appropriate, a 30-second rebuttal to another candidate may be offered by one of the moderators. This is permitted only if the candidate was called on by name during an opponent's response. And every candidate has the right to refuse to rebut if they choose not to. Part 3 is the closing remarks. I will close the questioning, and candidates will each have a minute to tell the audience why they should vote for them. We'll begin closing statements about 3:20 to ensure that we end right on time at 3:30. Finally, I'll review the guidelines that we all agreed to for this debate. Candidates have been informed not to use their cell phones. The moderator will determine the order of speaking and responding. Our candidates were sent the questions in advance and the order of speaking in advance. Candidates will remain muted until called upon to speak, and time limits will be strictly observed. And we've run through the cues to end speaking with our candidates before we came live. The recording of this debate is the property of the League, and permission must be sought to rebroadcast the entire debate or portions of it. My role, the moderator's role, is to manage the debate fairly for all candidates and the audience, and to keep the discussion moving forward. The candidates have all agreed in advance to be courteous and respectful of each other's points of view, refrain from interrupting one another, and avoid personal attacks. The moderator's decision is final. I do reserve the right to pause or even adjourn this debate and cut question time short if things spin out of control, which I know they won't. And we just want to keep everyone to the League standard of civility and consideration for the audience. We also urge all of the candidates to participate in our voter guide website, vote411.org. The League created this platform to provide voters with answers to their questions, and so they can hear from all the candidates. That's vote411.org. Now, I'd like to ask each candidate if you will introduce yourself and explain to the audience the relationship between the Central Arizona Water Conservation Board and the Central Arizona Project, and the most important responsibilities of each. Please describe your qualifications to serve on this board. You have 1 minute and 30 seconds. And our first candidate to speak will be Ms. Aguilar.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you, League of Women Voters, for putting this together. My name is Ylenia Aguilar. In 2016, I voted for the first time, and for myself. I'm formally undocumented. I've had the honor of serving the Osborne School District since 2016, now serving my 2nd term. I have experience in managing a crisis. As the president of the school district, I close schools and reopen them safely. Both of my children are now graduated from the school district, my oldest son attending NAU, Environmental Sciences and Sustainability as his major, and my youngest freshman in the North IB program. In my professional job, I work for Source Global, a company that produces a technology that creates water from sunlight and air. I have the honor of working with tribal communities, Navajo Nation, Apache White Mountain, Apache San Carlos, and I also work with rural areas and colonias, which are the unincorporated areas along the US-Mexico border, where people live in similar conditions as tribal communities without access to clean drinking water or utilities at time. And we know that we're facing unprecedented times. We need short-term solutions, long-term solutions, and some of the long-term solutions include negotiations with Mexico for permitting for desalination. As a Spanish speaker and native of Mexico and proud Arizonan, I know that I can do that work. And the role of the Central Arizona Water Conservation District Board is super important because it is in charge.
Thank you so much, appreciate it. And now we will move on to Ms. Arboleda. You have 90 seconds.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Arboleda, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this debate. We are facing unprecedented challenges on the Colorado River system: drought, climate change, and over-allocation. We need thoughtful, experienced leaders willing to work hard to find solutions to protect the Colorado River and ensure sustainable, resilient water supplies for our families and our future. I've spent most of my life living in Arizona. I grew up here and I've raised a family here. I have two children. One attends ASU, one attends Stanford University. And I'm uniquely qualified, an experienced leader and a fiscally sound policy advocate. I've been a water and natural resources attorney here in Arizona for 2 decades. So I have subject matter expertise in the area of water. I've served 6 years on the CAWCD board, so I'm running for re-election. I currently serve as the secretary of the board and on the leadership team. I'm the chair of the Groundwater Replenishment District Committee, and I'm a commissioner on the Arizona Water Banking Authority. The CAWCD board oversees the Central Arizona Project, sets rates and taxes, collects taxes, and also selects our general manager. I hope that I can earn your vote again to serve another 6 years. It's been my honor to serve on the board.
Thank you so much for that answer, Ms. Arboleda. We'll be moving on now to Ms. Duplessis, and you will have 1 minute and 30 seconds. Are we ready with our timer? Got it. You have 1 minute and 30 seconds, Ms. Duplessis.
Thank you so much. Again, my name is Shelby Duplessis, and thank you for having us here today. I think this is very helpful and informative to get our voters educated on how to vote. I know that the ballots came out early, and I'm here to earn your vote. I moved here 29 years ago from the state of Maine to go to ASU. And when I came to ASU, it was to study and become a civil engineer. I love the state of Arizona and stayed after that. I've lived more than half my life now here in Arizona. And again, just love it here. I have 2 children, 19 and 23, and they keep me quite busy and are fully supportive and excited to be with me during this candidacy. I will say that I got involved because of my passion for Arizona and my understanding as a civil engineer and the experience that I can bring to the table to help with value engineering and the infrastructure requirements, how to keep that maintenance and how we best afford those improvements and stabilization of the canal, finding other sources to bring to Arizona. There's plenty of water. We need to be conservative, absolutely, and cautious of the fact that we're in the desert, but we need to work together collaboratively as all stakeholders in this important endeavor. Water is our most precious resource, and I believe that I can add value by staying here on the board and committing to finding some of those solutions, working together to both listen, learn, and collaborate. So thank you again for having me here today, and it's my pleasure to ask for your vote.
Thank you so much, Ms. Duplessis. I want to pronounce your name correctly. Appreciate your answer. We'll now move on to Mr. Graff. You have 90 seconds.
Thank you very much, Jody, and thank you to the League of Women's Voters for this amazing opportunity and debate. Again, Ben Graff, running for re-election. To answer the first part of the question, the relationship between the board and CAP is one of stewardship of Arizona's most important water resource, our Colorado River water. And even though we're elected by Maricopa County, once you're on the board, we look at Pinal, Pima, and Maricopa County as a whole. And in fact, kind of a fun fact, next to the state of Arizona, the CAP board is the second largest governmental entity in Arizona by populace representation and by taxation. I am definitely one of the most qualified candidates for this position because out of the 14, I am one of only 2 incumbents that has dedicated the last 6 years to this volunteer elected position. And the only reason I'm here again is I am absolutely passionate about this issue. And as a father of 2 daughters and a husband and an Arizona native who has grown up in the desert, I absolutely want to make sure my family, all of your families and the next generations are comfortable and secure in Arizona's water future. We have a lot at stake from not only our water source, but the health of the Colorado River. And it's only the candidates that have dedicated their time to water industry, and our water future that should be elected to this next 6-year term. I thank you for your support and ask you for your vote.
Thank you so much, Mr. Graff. Appreciate your answer. And now we'll be moving on to Mr. Mishkin. You're up and you have 90 seconds.
Wonderful. I want to thank the league as well for putting this together. Nothing more important than getting candidates together so that the electorate, for those of us who live in Arizona, can make wise decisions about what we want our future to look like. I think the reason I'm getting involved, I was born and raised here in Arizona. We grew up, we had a cotton farm, cattle feedlot. My family's been involved in a lot of different industries in Arizona, but it's important that we look after all the stakeholders. We have a lot of conversation that you're going to hear today about our current crisis, but very few people are talking about what are we going to do for the next 50 years. The CAP was created so that we could withstand a dry day like today. And what are we doing to ensure that that project can continue to support our population and our state? And then also moving forward, what are we going to do? How are we going to continually innovate to give everyone in Arizona an opportunity to succeed? And that includes our agriculture industry, which is a $23 billion economic engine. And that includes making sure that Arizona gets its fair allotment of the Colorado River water, while other states don't take cuts and we get to take it on the chin. I don't mind being a good neighbor when times are tough, crimping up, but I expect my neighbors to do the same. We need people on this board who will have that conversation and make sure that we're working with our congressional delegation and our state legislature to do everything we can to make sure Arizona gets everything it can out of the Colorado.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mishkin. And now we will move on to Ms. Monize. You're up next and you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. It's an honor to be with you here in the League of Women Voters for having us, as well as everybody who came to listen within this virtual space. Thank you for being here. Again, my name is Amanda Monize. I am a native Arizonan. The most important thing about this office is that not only does the CAP system deliver the water to our users, being industrial, residential, and agriculture, but one of the other greater duties that falls upon this board is to collect taxes and levy those taxes and set water rates for said delivery. That money goes into the maintenance of our system, as well as to repay the federal government for the construction and maintenance of that system. It's important that financial oversight be sound and conservation be made to make sure that we can hold up to those obligations. In my experience over the last 10 years, I've been working in education and serving the Arizona community. And the last 3 years of that have been in administrative operations, in which I've had project management experience, as well as budget experience, working with federal grants and proposals in order to fund certain things, as well as getting individuals together to increase the success of the district for which I work for. On top of that, I work within the confines of policy and Arizona statutes. I'm very well versed in understanding how policies are created, including understanding statutes that are used to create said policy. I am asking for your vote today because I pledge to represent the taxpayer and to protect our allocations from the Colorado River. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Monize, right on time. And now we will be moving on to Ms. Peters. Ms. Peters, you have 1.5 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for this opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. My name is Karen Peters. I've lived in Arizona for most of my life. After graduating from ASU, I left the state to attend law school at Georgetown in Washington, D.C. But after those 3 years, I needed to come home to the sunshine and open spaces of Arizona. Today, I live in Phoenix with my husband, and we're the proud parents of 3 adult sons. I'm an Arizona lawyer and an executive in Phoenix city government. I'm running because right now Arizona faces unprecedented water supply challenges. I've been working around water issues in Arizona for over 30 years and I've seen a lot of changes. But I never expected we'd be where we are today, facing a crisis on the Colorado River, at least during my career. And as has been said, the Central Arizona Project, in terms of the relationship between the board and the project itself, the project The CAP is critical, complex infrastructure, pipes, pumps, canals, and reservoirs that deliver Colorado River water 336 miles uphill to central Arizona. So the district board ensures reliable operation of the system and repayment to the federal government for the construction costs. To do that, the district levies a property tax throughout the 3-county area and sets water delivery rates for its customers. CAWCD also governs the CAGRD. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. Appreciate your answer. And now our final candidate for this question, Mr. Wood. You have 90 seconds. You're up.
All right, thank you. Yeah, my name is Daniel Cirignani Wood. Thank you for having me here today. I appreciate it. It's an honor. The CAWCD board, the CAWCD board, is basically the board of directors for Central Arizona Project. Its most important responsibilities are providing for 40% of Central Arizona's water supply and providing for Central Arizona groundwater replenishment, which, other than the Rio Salado and Gila River systems, that's the primary source of the rest of Central Arizona's water. The board is designed to be comprised of many areas of expertise, and that is a good thing. But I suspect that it suffers from a lack of supply chain technical leadership. I've been a supply chain professional for almost 20 years, including 16 years as a supply chain business analyst at Intel and 2 years teaching in the WB Carey School of Business at Arizona State. I wrote a technical text on supply chain management for John Wiley & Sons with the assistance of SAP Labs in Palo Alto, California, and I'm presently the principal solution architect for a Valley battery electric vehicle manufacturer. I will bring to the board key expertise on capacity management, theory of constraints, and yield maximization and optimization, and the technical chops to go toe-to-toe with the engineers and other technical professionals who advise the board. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cirignani Wood. I appreciate your answer. Now we will proceed with part 2 of our program. We have prepared questions and the candidates have 1 minute to respond to each question. I will begin with the first question 1. Candidates, do you think the CAP 2022 strategic plan adequately addresses the current and future water crisis in Arizona? And what recommendations would you make to strengthen or improve the plan? First up, we have Ms. Arboleda. Ms. Arboleda, you have 60 seconds. You're up.
Yes, thank you for that question. I was involved in developing the strategic plan in 2019, and then it was adopted in 2020. It's our 2022 strategic plan. And so my answer is yes. I think that it does adequately address the water crisis. Our vision is to serve as a collaborative partner and innovative leader in sustainable management and reliable delivery of water for Central Arizona. Those terms, collaborative partnership and innovative leader, we talked about a lot and decided that those were 2 really important concepts that we wanted to include in the vision. Our mission is to reliably manage and deliver Colorado River water to Maricopa, Pinal, and Pima counties. Our values are teamwork, safety, integrity, service, and professionalism. And our key result areas include now stewardship and sustainability and public trust, partnerships, and leadership.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Arboleda. Next up, we have Ms. Aguilar. Ms. Aguilar, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you for the question. And as someone who has been involved in a strategic plan, I was really glad to see this one. And yes, I do agree that it does address it. And I think that in order to continue to earn the trust of customers, taxpayers, and stakeholders, the plan should also include education and conservation campaigns as part of one of the recommendations. And that is said through the strategic plan, but the way that I see that happening is through the reimagining agriculture in light of water limitations, thinking about like existing water technologies, leveraging and attracting the entities to Arizona and create new industries and jobs, partnering up with community college systems to create new ag tech jobs, building collaborations to educate on procurement process to support acceleration to agriculture, and designing region hub for sustainable water and technology that will attract investment capital.
Thank you, Ms. Aguilar. Appreciate your answer. And now we'll be moving on. Mr. Mishkin, you are up next. You have 60 seconds. You may begin.
Yes, thank you. Great question. You know, the reality is this board has been a very high functioning board for a long time. And the reality is Arizona has wonderful, wonderful water policy. As opposed to our neighbors to the left of us in California, the reality is we know we live in a desert and we've been planning for a moment like this for a long time. Over the last 30 years, the CAP has put over 3 trillion gallons of water underground for times like this. The CAP has created a strategic plan. They do this every couple of years to make sure that they're on pace and focused on today's problems and tomorrow's problems. But it's important that we not hit the alarm button for Arizona water. The problem that we have right now is the Colorado River is in a period of decline. And we need to make sure that we use those resources wisely, and we work with our other stakeholders and other agencies such as SRP to make sure that Arizona has good, safe water policy, which we've done year in and year out.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mishkin. And we're moving on. Ms. Duplessis, you are up now. You have 60 seconds. You may begin.
I agree. Great question. The strategic plan is very well thought out. A lot of smart people obviously sitting at the table to put that together. And I think a lot of forethought's been given, and we can continue to grow on that. We need to continue with the collaboration of all stakeholders. Education, very important. We do live in a desert, and as great water stewards thus far, we need to continue on that mode, and we need to start educating those using the water on how they can best compromise some of their decisions and still live comfortably, but at the same time make a difference. We all need to come together to make a difference and to be good water stewards, and I should say continue to be. I would like to also look at the innovation opportunities and sources where we get the water from and incorporating some of that into that strategic plan more so. We're very diversified already. I think we need to continue that diversified plan and again, doing that collaboratively. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Duplessis. Now we will move on to Ms. Amanda Monize. Ms. Monize, you have 60 seconds as well. You're up.
Thank you. The strategic plan, I think, addresses a lot of important issues and which guide this organization to manage its resources and assets. However, I think there's some improvements that can be made specifically as it comes to public trust, partnerships, and leaderships. All the constituents that I've spoken to, most of them didn't even know this board of directors existed. And that's a concern. Many people didn't know if this office was elected officials that sit on a board that govern our water. That's a major concern to me, and that needs to be addressed. And we need to make sure that we do more outreach education, which will also lead to transparency, because the finances that are operated underneath this board are massive, in which we need to use them according to represent the taxpayer and to conserve our water and make sure that we have our future protected, not only with our resource, but also financially. As well as I would like to see more about our conservation, reuse, and augmentation to ensure that we have ample supply for our growing population here in Arizona.
Thank you, Ms. Duplessis, or excuse me, Ms. Monize. I apologize. Now we will move to Mr. Ben Graff. Mr. Graff, you are up in just a second. You have 60 seconds and you may begin.
Thank you very much. So as one of the members of the board, I guess as a group, we're a bipartisan group of authors or parents, if you will, of this strategic plan. Obviously, I as well as Ms. Arboleda, had a role in drafting the 2022 strategic plan. It is a superb document and plan. It secures our water supply. It focuses on an item that hasn't quite been discussed yet. Maybe we can talk about it later, our power resources and our renewable energy plan, and also just increasing our reliability. But as with any strategic plan, it is a document that must adapt as things change. An example of something that could not have been foreseen at the time we completed that was the requirement now for the lower basin states to remove 2 to 4 million acre feet of water, an example of where we need to adapt that plan. We've also spent an incredible amount of time as a customer service task force, making sure that our customers are given the opportunity to take part in the process.
Thank you so much, Mr. Graff. We will now move on to Mr. Cirignani Wood. You are up next and you have 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Arizona's done a lot to prepare for this day, and CAP is part of it, and it's impressive in itself. But we do need to be prepared to take some criticism or face some constructive criticism if we're to get anywhere. The document that we're referring to can be found on library.cap.az.com. In my opinion, as a citizen who's concerned enough about water and the matter to spend the time and personal fortune to campaign for this position, I think it's a bit short on specifics, and I wish it had more I wish I had more that's positive to say. But if anyone disagrees with me, please find the document. Actual details of the plan are articulated on pages 12 and 13. And when I ask myself, can I see how this articulation leads to resolving Arizona's share of a 1.3 trillion gallon problem? The answer is no. I'd prefer that CAP picked 1 or 2 areas where it can concretely, measurably deliver and spell out exactly how it plans to do that.
Thank you so much for your answer. And now we'll wrap it up with Ms. Karen Peters. You have 60 seconds and you are on now.
Thank you. As was indicated, this 2022 strategic plan was developed in 2019 and approved in 2020. So while it is a couple of years old, I think that the vision, mission, values, etc., are exactly where they should be. And in fact, the key result areas, the strategies that would be employed by CAWCD are also the right ones. We tend to focus right now, given the situation we're in, on the water supply key result area, but all of them are essential. Reliability, power, replenishment, all of them. But with regard to water, facilitating deliveries of non-project water through the system, as mentioned, that's very important. Collaborating in the recovery of water. So there's more to be done, but I think that the strategic plan really hits the right notes.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate your answer. And now we'll be moving on to my co-moderator.
Thank you, Jody. My name is Candace Engler. We're moving on to question number 2. Question number 2, what are the key factors causing our water shortage, and what can the CAP do to ensure the over 5 million people dependent upon CAP that they can and will continue to have water? We'll begin with Mr. Mishkin. Mr. Mishkin, you have 1 minute.
So this is a wonderful question, and I think it's the crux of why we're all here. What can we do to shore up our water supply, and why are we in shortage? And the reality is, while Arizona's moved from a drought situation to being a little bit drier than normal, the Colorado River Basin is depleted. We have a river that people thought produced 18 million acre feet, producing less than 10 million acre feet of water. So we need to work with all the stakeholders, and we need to have an honest conversation about the reservoir system. I think if I were to run my checking account the same way that the Bureau of Reclamation has ran the reservoirs, I'd be thrown in jail. We need to move away from an allocation system that says you get a certain amount of acre feet to a percentage allocation. And that way we can all share in the pain when it's painful, and when it's wet, we can all share in the benefit. But we need people who will be willing to take that seat at the table to renegotiate the Colorado River Compact.
Thank you, Mr. Mishkin. Thank you for your response. We'll move along now to Mr. Graff. Ben Graff, you have 1 minute.
Candace, thanks for the question. The 3 main reasons that we have shortage are over allocation. Right from the beginning of the allocation, we frankly did not take into account evaporation and system losses to the tune of about 1.2 million acre feet. Climate change and aridification being the fact that even when we have snowpack and water travels down to the Colorado River, our soil is so dry it is absorbing that water before it gets to the river. and then overuse and the need for us to make significant cuts. The way our board is going to continue to ensure that the 5 million citizens get their water is through a very active and aggressive negotiation with the lower basin states to first make a significant cut of 2 to 4 million acre feet, but then to start looking immediately at both the short and long-term goals for bringing in ways to supplement our water locally and even larger projects that may take longer, such as desal.
Thank you, Mr. Graff. We'll continue on. Next up is Ms. Aguilar. Ms. Aguilar, you have 1 minute.
Thank you for the question. As Ben mentioned, I also believe climate change is one of the most important things that we should recognize as the key factors causing our water shortage. And that's caused by human behavior, and understanding and believing in science is very important and critical for this role. We know that aridification is permanent, and we know that one of the other keys is the overallocation and overuse. I think that, as mentioned by Ben, the negotiations and cuts will happen and are necessary, but we also need to think about, like, my ancestors were the first engineers and scientists who created the canal system, irrigation system, and aqueducts. So now we have modern technology and science to help us find solutions and secure water for all Arizonans. So we have to really think about the innovative side and how we come up with these solutions that will allow us as board members to ensure the security of water for Arizonans.
Thank you, Ms. Aguilar. We'll move on now. Next is with Ms. Peters. Ms. Peters, you have 1 minute.
Thanks so much. I think it's been said, the key factors that are causing the shortage are, number one, first and foremost, over allocation. Over 100 years ago, decisions were made based on very, very bad information in terms of the amount of water available to allocate. But of course, since then, we've experienced now for the last 22 or 3 years, historic drought, which is made worse by climate change. This is not a temporary situation. This is the new normal, and we need to adapt. So CAP it delivers water to water users such as water utilities, tribes, and others. So for me, what we need to do is work with those water users to overcome obstacles and find innovative ways to leverage the canal system, to move other water supplies, and facilitate water transactions and help them get through this time.
And thank you for your response, Ms. Aguilar. We'll move right along now, and our next candidate is Ms. Peters. Ms. Peters, you have 1 minute.
We are actually on Ms. Arboleda. We just heard from Ms. Peters.
I am so sorry.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. Ms. Arboleda, my apologies. Thank you. You have 1 minute.
Oh, great. Thank you. Well, I think this is a great question. And I agree. Drought, climate change, and overallocation are the perfect storm here, creating our water challenges. And the upper basin states, they have allocations based on percentages, and they share in evaporation and system losses based on those percentages. The lower basin states and Mexico, we have fixed amounts and a priority system. And CAP has the junior priority, so we take the most of the evaporation and system losses. I think there's short-term, mid-term, and long-term solutions. Short-term, we need to equitably allocate those evaporation and system losses, and we need durable conservation and increased efficiency. We need to work with agriculture on voluntary compensated reductions. I'll say long-term, we need to look at environmentally responsible desalination. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arboleda. We'll move on now to Mr. Wood. Mr. Wood, your response for 1 minute, please.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, there's three key factors causing the water shortage. They are Climate change, we are losing snowpack in the Rockies. That is where our water comes from. This has been going on for 3-4 decades, and that is a key cause. Another is industrial preparation. We're somewhat prepared, but we're obviously facing when we're facing a 1.3 trillion gallon shortfall, we're not adequately prepared. The third is federal law and the agreements that control the apportionment of water. Federal law apportions river and stream water according to the equitable appropriation theory. It's too much detail to go into right now, but it means is that farmers in Yuma and California's Imperial County who inherited water rights from the Colorado River 150 years ago hold nearly unlimited rights to withdraw Colorado River water before all other water users, including the residents of Central Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. We're moving on now to Ms. Duplessis. Ms. Duplessis, you have 1 minute and you may begin now.
Okay, thank you so much for the question. I think everyone has covered everything at this point. Obviously, renegotiating is one of the first things I feel we need to do and get everyone back to the table. Us being in junior status and taking the brunt of, well, all of the 21% cut. At the same time, we need to be looking at other options and again, continuing to diversify. There are supplemental sources that we could go after. We just need to look at what those costs are and what the feasibility is based on environmental impacts and sustainability. And at the same time, looking at desalination, moving water from the Midwest through a pipeline, considering all of our options. And then we need to continue to use the marvel of our canals, the river that runs up and downstream, moving sources of water around the state as needed. But we need to do that collaboratively and all together to overcome these challenges and to get smarter through education and really looking at the allocation and uses.
Thank you, Ms. Duplessis. Our last candidate that we'll be hearing from is Ms. Monize. Ms. Monize, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Luckily, in Arizona, we are not disillusioned that we've lived in an arid desert our entire lives. And we know that with the climate that we live in, that we have to be very careful about our water. And we've done a phenomenal job of having efforts where we conserve water in our state. And we've put forth this by different programs like the CAWCD, as well as other policies such as the 100-year water rule, in which developers have to guarantee 100 years worth of water for their subdivisions. However, other states have not been good stewards of this water. So Arizona has taken a burden, the largest burden of conserving water from the Colorado River. And we need to make sure that we leverage our conservation efforts to elevate our priority level. And other states need to be held accountable for their mismanagement. So our priorities need to be set differently in terms of allocations. Moreover, we need to work with legislators to bring forth different incentives or encourage water conservation and be mindful of the policies that are mutually beneficial to the people of Arizona, both economically and environmentally speaking.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for those answers, candidates. Now we're going to move on to question 3, which I will handle. Question 3 is, do you think the CAP has adequate resources, financial expertise, and personnel to meet its obligations? If not, where could it look for additional funds, expertise, or personnel, and how would you put those additional resources to use? We'll first hear from Mr. Cirignani Wood. You are up and you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. CAP does have adequate authority and capacity to partner with sister institutions and get done what it needs to get done. But I do, from time to time, question whether it has adequate technical expertise and leadership. It faces a monumental problem. When we're responsible for water supply for 5.6 million Arizonans, how do we account for our share of 1.3 trillion gallon water shortfall? And its answer largely seems to be to implement existing protocols. And I wonder at times what would account for the timidity of a problem of this in response to a problem of this gravity. As a supply chain professional, I have analyzed the problem the way I would any other given to me by private industry clients. And it's clear to me the two most powerful conservation and supply solutions are drip irrigation and evaporative prevention. The fact that CAP has not only failed to come out in favor of these, but actually actively stymies one of them suggests to me there's a deficit of technical expertise in CAP leadership with the knowledge and competence to challenge the judgment of CAP engineers and bureaucrats.
Thank you for that answer. We'll move on next to Ms. Monize. Ms. Monize, you have 60 seconds and you can go.
Yes, CAP employs nearly 500 people full-time, as well as the supervised by the general manager, who I believe are employed based on their expertise in order to navigate what we have to do with the CAP system. We have a very large budget, and I believe that also we have current reserves of $30 million because of conservative efforts by some of the board, as well as those in higher level positions. However, conditions continue to change on the Colorado River, and we are set to hit some economic challenges on the board. So we do have to be very mindful that we have decreased revenue and a list of growing capital projects. So financial expertise will be important to managing and using taxpayer dollars appropriately, as well as including setting accurate rates for the true cost of water, not subsidizing the cost of water with property taxes. The board has officials, and yet we find ourselves in this position. Big officials who have sat on this board for a long time, but yet we are facing water shortages and financial tribulations.
Thank you, Ms. Monize. Next up, we have Ms. Peters. We'll hear from you for 1 minute.
Thanks so much. So the answer is really yes and no. Yes, CAP has terrific, experienced personnel and has access to the best expertise available. It also has a reliable annual revenue stream in the property taxes that it levies. The foreseeable financial challenges include rapid inflation that's driving up operating and capital costs, but also with less water flowing through the system, that per unit water rates are likely to spike in order to cover those variable costs, as well as the fixed costs like repayment to the federal government. The good news is the CAP has significant financial reserves that it can and should use in a responsible manner to reduce rate shock and keep on a strong financial footing. So they have what they need, they just need to use it very wisely.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. Next, we'll hear from Ms. Aguilar. You have 60 seconds and you may begin.
Yes, I do believe that they have the adequate resources, as mentioned, with personnel, finances, and expertise. I do believe that they've done an amazing job managing and operating the budget and collecting taxes to repay the federal government for the construction of CAP. There could be, if needed, additional federal funding opportunities, but as mentioned before, they have had an opportunity to create a funding, so in case of an experiences like what we're experiencing now. So there is a rainy day fund that they have done a great job at allocating. And I do believe that there should be an opportunity for education to towards the public and private leaders for economic attraction to ensure we're attracting the right types of companies to our state, and for conservation efforts in general public and stakeholders. We should create public service announcements by partnering up with leaders. And
thank you, Ms. Aguilar. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Graff. Mr. Graff, 60 seconds, and you can start now.
Thank you. This is a big and incredibly important question. Yes, as the question was asked, CAP is on track to have the financial ability to meet its obligations. But we're not in a vacuum. We partner with ADWR, obviously through the governor's office. We work with other agencies like SRP, and there's federal government funding at play here to look at the problem as a whole. So, I mean, our taxation authority is well-founded and I think responsibly used and gained. We are currently and just recently found a very creative way to blend property taxes with our water rates. To make sure that we were creating predictable costs for our cities. At the same time, we have huge expenses, like $160 million expense coming up just to replace 2 of our siphons. that's going to have too much of an impact on a water rate. So that's a property tax cost. We're on track for our repayment, and we're very curious about the additional funds from the WIFA state government and from the Inflation Act.
Thank you, Mr. Graff. Next, we'll hear from Ms. Duplessis. You may begin.
Yes, so to answer that question, I do believe that we have strong expertise and personnel at the CAP. We have the financial means right now. We just need to continue to be wise. Our challenges that are changing in what they've been in the past, and we need to all work together to continue to stay on that steady path that we've been on. I think that with the experience at the CAP, there are the challenges of looking at new innovative options, such as farming technology to help with reduction on some of those losses. And we need to continue on looking at other sources that I mentioned before. And I think that we have the personnel and the financial structure, but we need to be as careful and as cautious with our budget as possible with the improvements that are needed, such as the siphon replacements and maintaining the current canal with the infrastructure costs rising, labor costs rising, inflation at the same time as reducing the amount of water in the canal. So it'll definitely be a challenge, but I think that we're up for that.
Thank you, Ms. Duplessis. Now we will hear from Ms. Arboleda, and you have 1 minute as well. You may start.
Yes, thank you for this question. I think CAP not only has adequate resources, but really excellent resources in terms of its expertise and personnel and financial resources. And I believe that they're enough to meet our existing obligations. Where I think we are going to see challenges is in facing the reductions and voluntary compensated system conservation. And if we want to replace those water supplies and augment water supplies, that's going to be a big financial challenge. And also with the groundwater replenishment district, finding water supplies to replenish groundwater that's pumped. All of those things we're going to need some help from the federal government, and also public-private partnerships are going to be really important going forward. And I'm excited to see how we can work also with WIFA, the new board that's been created to augment water supply.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Arboleda. And bringing up the rear is Mr. Mishkin. You have 1 minute. You may begin.
I don't know if I want to place it as bringing up the rear, but so, first and foremost, the CAP is probably the most well-recognized, well-respected water board in the entire state. They have great expertise. They have plenty of money with a $300+ million budget. It's not a resources question. This is really a question of how do we innovate in our state and help our farming community, which uses 73% of the water in the state of Arizona, figure out how to navigate the challenges of losing what is a water resource that goes to farming far and above anything else. Our ag community is going to take it on the chin here, and we need to figure out solutions of how they innovate, how we can help them switch to drip irrigation, how we can make sure Arizona remains food independent and remains the #2 exporter of fresh vegetables in the country. The challenge isn't in the CAP, it's how do we work with our community and stakeholders to ensure that they have the resources they need so we can be successful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mishkin. We're moving on now to question 4. Question 4. What do you think about the steps taken so far by the CAP to reduce water taken from the Colorado River and thereby leave water in Lake Mead? And what more should be done? We'll start the question with Ms. Duplessis.
I think that we were caught off guard by the 21% reduction, and taking that solely from just the state of Arizona was not fair. We need to go back again and renegotiate that, especially with the evaporation and system losses with the rest of the states in the lower basin. I think that also contributed to the losses in Lake Mead and in Lake Powell, and we need to get back to maintaining, and that will be part of the tier system. obviously going to a tier 2 and looking at how we replace that water and keeping water in those systems so that they can contribute and continue to successfully provide what's needed to generate the electricity and other means, and so that they're not a complete loss. And so I think at the same time, a lot has been done to manage. We need to go back and renegotiate.
Thank you, Ms. Duplessis. We'll continue our questioning with next candidate, Mr. Mishkin. Mr. Mishkin, 60 seconds.
Thank you. You know, the CAP hasn't had much of a say of the steps that are taken. Those are dictated by the drought contingency plan and by the Bureau of Reclamation. I think it's important to remember CAP's job is to deliver the water. They have a seat at the table in policy and to have that conversation. And what we need on this board are people who are going to advocate for Arizona's allocation of water, who are going to fight for that. We need people who will stand up and call out, you know, some of the hypocrisy in the deals that have been cut, where can get water and get our allocation and get the CAP, but we're the junior stakeholder on here. And the reason for that are the deals that have been cut in the past, but populations have changed and we need to renegotiate those deals, especially the Colorado River Compact and the next drought contingency plan that gets renegotiated in 2025.
Thank you for your response, Mr. Mishkin. We'll move right along now. Next, we have Ms. Monize. Ms. Monize, you have 1 minute.
Yes, I think the CAP board has done a good job with some steps, such as tasking cities and towns to create their own conservation programs, as well as looking into some end drip systems for our farming and helping to restore some wells of farmers so that they can be functional and use less of the CAP water system. However, some things I don't agree with that could be better is fallowing, paying our farmers not to grow any food, because this is not in the best interest of the state of Arizona economically or environmentally. If we're going to be talking about increase of temperatures being a problem, the best thing to combat that is fields of green. So our farmers need to be protected if we're going to be talking about the temperature of our state, as well as, again, we need to leverage all the efforts that we've had in our state to pursue a different or more equitable or equal allocation of the Colorado River water and have a balanced cuts and allocations, as well as a board that has innovative ideas and different expertise, not just people of industry or politicians that may be influenced by outside special groups.
Thank you, Ms. Monize. We'll next hear from Mr. Wood. Mr. Wood, 60 seconds. You may begin.
Thank you for the question. So yes, the steps that have been taken so far are those have been planned, and primarily that is fallowing farmland. Obviously, it isn't enough, and it won't be enough until the water elevation at Lake Mead starts to rise. There's 2 additional steps that we have it in our power to take. We can impose a $7 per month surcharge on households in the Tri-County area served by CAP for 24 months. That will raise $400 million for vouchers for farmers to convert to drip irrigation. This can save 680 billion gallons of water per year. It carries the greatest hope of success, and Israel's demonstrated this success by converting 100% of its farms to drip. The second is post an RFP, a request for proposals to the private sector for proposals to cover the CAP Canal, Lake Pleasant, and Lake Mead. If this can be done for $6 billion, the state has the resources to do it, and doing so would generate 200 billion gallons of water per year by keeping the water we already have.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Next up, we have Ms. Peters. Ms. Peters, you may begin.
Thank you so much. So far, CAP has done a great job of facilitating system conservation, which is where water users forego delivery of a portion of their Colorado River allocation in exchange for financial compensation. And that system conservation and similar measures have been important, good faith efforts on a year-to-year basis to prevent elevations in Lake Mead from falling to levels that would trigger even deeper cuts to water deliveries. Unfortunately, what's happening on the Colorado River and throughout the West should be considered not just a drought, but rather a transition to a hotter and drier future, Colorado River is not going to return to its historic high flows. We must change our lifestyles and rework our economy to adapt. CAP needs to work across boundaries and old approaches to make these permanent changes.
Thank you for your response, Ms. Peters. Next up, we have Ms. Arboleda. Ms. Arboleda, you have 60 seconds and you may begin.
Great, thank you. So I'm very proud of the drought contingency plan. Ben Graff and I were involved in the negotiations of that plan. It was an enormous effort. I think it set up a process for success for the future. And we got involvement from all the lower basin states. So Arizona, California, Nevada, and Mexico all committed to reductions that in total at the tier 3 level amount to almost 1.4 million acre feet. On top of that, we agreed to a voluntary plan called the 500 plus plan, and Arizona met its contribution of over 200,000 acre feet. In fact, last year we left half of our supply, 800,000 acre feet, in the lake. However, this hasn't been sufficient because of climate change and continuing reductions in the Colorado River system. So we need to do more. I want to see us do more with wastewater reuse, and hopefully I can get to the solution.
We'll hear next from Ms. Aguilar. Ms. Aguilar, 60 seconds and you may begin now.
Yes, I agree with Alex. The current CAP board has done a great job with the drought contingency plan. And Arizona has complied with the reduction assigned to our state as junior rights holders. CAP has also done a great job with municipalities and cities to support their drought contingency plans. And I think the one thing that I do feel needs to be done is include all the voices and stakeholders, especially the voices of tribal communities. And as far as what we need to do is renegotiate the allocation in 2025. And we need to continue representing Arizona in the multi-state international negotiations. And I can be the voice for the international negotiations with Mexico. And of course, we need to continue to advocate for agriculture. We know that most of us, well, the state and the country relies on our farm workers and agricultural workers for subsistence. And we know that as reductions continue to agriculture will be impacted and people will suffer as a cause of increased rates in food, and the poor will be the most impacted. So advocating for agriculture.
Thank you for your response. We'll hear next from Mr. Graff. Mr. Graff, you have 60 seconds. You may begin.
Thank you. Let me give, as an existing member of the board, a slightly different perspective on DCP, which is, I can tell you, out of the 15 members of our board from all parts of the state and all political parties, not a single one of us thought DCP was the end-all answer and washed our hands of the drought. And I think that's been made clear. It was a phenomenal piece of work that put and saved 1.4 million acre feet from leaving the lake. But we always knew it was a temporary fix as we started to look towards more long-term solutions. So you can bet that our existing board members and our new board members incoming after this election will take part in really revamping that vision. DCP was also very important because it was the first true example of how we could get California and Nevada to the table and make a tough compromise. I'm also just so inspired by the 500 plus plan because that represents voluntary contributions from cities and our customers. What we need to do more of is more technology that helps save water.
Thank you so much. We will now move on to question 5. Question 5, how can the CAP be most effective in meeting the agreement among states to keep water flowing in the Colorado River? You'll have 60 seconds to answer this question, and we will return to Mr. Graff as the first responder. Mr. Graff, 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. I think with this question, I'm going to be a bit bold just to answer it in a different way, which is actually CAP and our leadership, through our executive director and our board's leadership, needs to actually look at what's going to change among the agreement with our states. I mean, some things are stuck in historic water law, and our junior priority is unlikely to change. But what can change? I think that the way that we allocate the river losses among the states is something that we need to be at the forefront of leadership. If we can accomplish anything over the next few months, it's to convince the federal government to make pro rata reductions across California, Nevada, and Arizona for these system losses. Admit and account for the evaporation and the system loss. That would be a huge accomplishment right off the bat. So while some things in the agreement, I think will stay the same, I think we will be at the table to make sure that we mostly get California to agree with changes.
Thank you. Appreciate your answer. And we will move along to Ms. Peters. You have 60 seconds and you may begin.
Thanks so much. So CAP is an important collaborator and supports the state of Arizona through the State Department of Water Resources, which is the principal negotiator with the other lower basin states, tribal communities, and the federal government on matters related to the Colorado River. As has been said, the laws, treaties, and contracts that control the Colorado River give lowest priority to the CAP. So in times of shortage, it is first in line for cuts. But CAP plays an essential role in finding and implementing solutions. And as I've mentioned before, leveraging its infrastructure is a great opportunity. Leveraging its relationships with our federal delegation or other states to help Arizonans to live and thrive sustainably within constrained water supplies.
Thank you for your answer, Ms. Peters. And now we will hear from Mr. Cirignani Wood. You are up next and you may begin now with 60 seconds.
Yeah, thank you for the question. We'll be most successful or most effective at negotiating the agreement by implementing the two steps I mentioned in answer to the last question: drip irrigation and evaporative prevention. By generating over 800 billion gallons of water savings and new supply, Arizona will be in the very best position possible to renegotiate the Colorado River Compact. Moreover, I believe if we make the offer, Nevada would be only too happy to assist in the project of covering or partially covering Lake Mead, since Nevada has no false hopes of foreign desalinization as a magic bullet to this problem.
Thank you so much for your answer. Now we will move on to Mr. Mishkin. Mr. Mishkin, you have 1 minute. You may begin.
Yeah. Thank you. It's an important question, but it's important to remember CAP's job is to deliver the water that's been allocated to it. We have a role to play in the conversation. We have a seat to take at the table, and we need to make sure we have strong leadership. We've had that in the past. We continue to have that, but we need to make sure we have people who will stand on this board. Mr. Graff brings up a good issue of how do we get somewhere like California to account for some of the loss in their system, some of the evaporation. How do we do those kinds of things? But we need to have proven leadership and people who know how to take that and empower our legislature, our governor, whoever that ends up being, and our congressional delegations so that we can go and have this conversation with a state like California that has a fifth of Congress and gets to basically have veto power almost on an interstate compact. But everything needs to be renegotiated, and we have to have that fight because it's not fair that Arizona is the only one who takes it on the chin with a 21% cut.
Thank you, Mr. Mishkin. Now we'll hear from Ms. Duplessis. You have 1 minute and you may begin.
Okay, thank you. I think this goes back to what a lot has been said today early on when Mr. Graff said that it's very important to elect the right people to this board with water knowledge. We need to make sure that we keep a strong board together that's ready to be skilled at the negotiations with the other states. We need strong leadership. With Mr. Cook retiring and having a new executive director, as well as a new governor coming in, we'll have a new director at Arizona Department of Water Resources. I think keeping a strong leadership team together on the CAP board to have the forethought and strength to be able to go and renegotiate the deal would be the first and most important thing that we do. At the same time as keeping a good management style and using our expertise to make sure that we maintain the already existing CAP, and encouraging others to be educated and helping in that fight.
Thank you for your response. Now we will move on to Ms. Aguilar. You have 1 minute and you can start now.
Yes, thank you for the question. I would say implementing water conservation efforts and initiatives, increasing water rates, ensuring reuse and replenishment of water, and also what has been mentioned, having the right leaders in place who have experience on boards and have experience with water, and people who can work across party lines and be inclusive and include the voices of tribal communities, and people who can negotiate with our international partner, which is Mexico, and always being at the table and advocating for all Arizonans. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. Now we will hear from Ms. Monize. You have 1 minute and you can start now.
Thank you. Yes, the CAP system, or the CAP board, has led the way in conservation efforts. As we've discussed, we've done a very good job of preserving our water, and we've led the way amongst the basin states. We set an example of this, and other basin states have learned from some of our efforts. Although California takes a bashing, they have started, the Metropolitan Water District has adopted a similar system that we have. However, there are several years before that is completed. So looking at long-term, or short-term solutions, we do need to pressure the government, federal government, to rebalance our allocations. We need to continue to innovate. We need better water conservation, more reuse, and more augmentation to provide supply, as well as the tech innovations that were recently discussed. We have new technology, and we have to make sure that we upgrade our systems in order to account for that, to make sure we have minimal loss to our system, evaporation rates as previously mentioned, as well as financial responsibility to taxpayers. How are we going to pay for all of this? We need to make sure that is accounted for.
Thank you, appreciate that response. And finally, we have Ms. Arboleda. You have 1 minute and you can begin now.
Thank you. CAP needs to continue to focus on collaborative partnerships and to support innovative technologies and creative solutions. We have a common destiny in the Colorado River Basin. Our lives, our futures, our economies are interconnected. It is imperative that we listen to our other water users in the basin, other states, the federal government, Mexico, understand their values, their challenges, their concerns, and that's how we identify creative solutions. I was in DC in May and in Santa Fe in September, working directly with our congressional delegation, Department of Interior, the basin states in Mexico. We need to continue to do that so that we work together. We advocate for Arizona's interests, but at the same time, understanding that we share a common destiny and a common future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arboleda. This is our last question. Question number 6. What can the CAP do to encourage water conservation in Central Arizona? And do you think this is an important initiative? We'll begin with Ms. Peters. Ms. Peters, 1 minute. You may begin.
Thank you so much. Absolutely, the answer is yes, it's important. Conservation is by far the most efficient and cost-effective tool to accomplish the permanent changes that are needed now. Every gallon that's not used is a gallon we won't need to acquire in the future. CAP can and should advocate for water conservation in Central Arizona and partner with industry and municipal water providers to share that message. I applaud their recent efforts to reach out to stakeholders and talk about how best to do that. And I think that's an absolutely terrific direction for them to go. CAP should lead by example, ensuring that its own operations are as efficient as possible, and consider ways to pilot new conservation methods and technologies. In addition, in its capacity as the CIGRD, it can work directly with member communities to accomplish conservation goals.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. We'll move along right now. Next up is Mr. Wood. Mr. Wood, 1 minute. Begin now.
Thank you for the question. We do need to do everything in our power to promote water conservation. And we should look to Nevada's example for more restrictive urban and residential uses of water. And we can do more to promote among our own water users how important water is to industry that makes our prosperous lives here possible. TSMC, Intel, Facebook, Amazon, GoDaddy, I could list many more. They're here because they have adequate water for their fabs and data centers, and that's where our prosperity comes from. Otherwise, I think it's more important that we educate water users about the federal role and equitable appropriation and how federal law is literally a part of what's causing this problem, as well as how we can reform that law, namely by making efficient water use a requisite to the government's assessment of what's equitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Next, we'll hear from Ms. Arboleda. Ms. Arboleda, you may begin now.
Thank you. This is a very important question, near and dear to me. I think conservation is critically important. It's in the name of our board, and it needs to be a top priority. I have led the way on 2 very important conservation programs that CAP is working on. The first one I'll talk about is on the groundwater replenishment district. In my committee, we evaluated and updated our conservation policy and developed a new conservation incentive program with home builders to be rewarded and recognized for using water sense efficient fixtures in new construction and advertising that to home buyers. We've strengthened our grant program for turf removal and improved technologies. In addition, I spearheaded CAP's new conservation program, where we're working with municipalities, private water companies, tribes to support them through messaging, education, and grants for conservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arboleda. Next up, we're going to hear from Ms. Monize. Ms. Monize, you have 60 seconds. You may begin.
Yes. Thank you. Conservation here is key. And I think, again, not to sound repetitive, but we've done a really good job at conservation. And as mentioned, especially with our replenishment of our groundwater is an essential piece of what keeps us vital and able to operate in the state of Arizona. I think CAP also, we need to recognize that we have a duty and a responsibility to uphold our contracts and obligations to our users, and that includes industrial, residential, and agricultural users. In doing so, we also need to work within the confines of the policy that set the statutes that govern this position and any other regulations that are set forth. As our conditions change and water availability changes and economic stressors hit more of us, adaptations need to be made so it limits the impact on our users and whatever financially and environmentally feasible. This also includes having responsible growth and making sure that we manage our state so that we are not growing too quickly to accommodate the water needs of our population.
Thank you for your response, Ms. Monize. Next up, we're going to hear from Ms. Aguilar. Ms. Aguilar, we have you up for 1 minute. You may begin.
Yes, thank you. As mentioned before, conservation, part of the name, very, very important part of the solution for the short-term solution. So we can do that through providing education campaigns, encouraging sustainable and efficient water use, to securing new water supplies to sustain Central Arizona by creating public service announcements, partnering up with leaders to inform and educate the community, taxpayers, and all stakeholders. We need to partner up with municipal and cities to provide incentives. We need to include technology innovation such as NDRIP, that is the Israeli technology device that's helping reduce water waste in irrigation, and also support and cities and municipalities such as Scottsdale that are using direct potable reuse, and to think and reimagine the way that we function by using science and technology to our advantage. Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Aguilar. Next up, we have Cory Mishkin. Mr. Mishkin, you have 60 seconds and you may begin right now.
Thank you. Obviously, conservation is important, I know it's hard for everybody to understand this, given the name of our board, but the job of CAP is to deliver the water. I think the job that we can do, the role we can take in conservation is by encouraging and helping people realize that there's innovation that's available to them so that they can be better users of water. It's important that we don't walk around with a stick, but that we show them the carrot, that we show people how to do more with less. That's not really the role of this board. The role of this board is taxation and ensuring that the water is delivered to everybody as cost effectively as possible. I think the role of our board members is to go out and advocate for conservation in public. It's how do we encourage people to switch to hybrids of Bermuda that use 40% less water, or drip irrigation, or how do we work with the Colorado River Indian community and the Gila River Indian community to allow the Colorado River Indian community to send their water down to the Central Valley where they can sell it. Those are some of the ideas that we have.
Thank you, Mr. Mishkin. Our next response will be from Mr. Graff. Mr. Graff, you're up. 1 minute.
Thank you very much. Our board's role, first of all, obviously conservation is the broadest, maybe most important category that needs very specific solutions, but it is important to understand that our board has limited authority, defined authority, and what we can and cannot do. This conversation became much more fluid in recent months because in our conversation for setting water rates for our cities and other customers, the discussion of how offsetting that with tax money would allow for more investment for cities and our users to put into conservation brought up the conversation of how do we have this conversation? How do we help cities? How do we encourage? I'm very interested in having that conversation with our customers and our municipalities without overstepping our board's authority. We don't tell our customers what to do with their water, and I think that's important. Also, when you're elected to this board, and those of you that will be new to the board, I hope you speak at every opportunity to help on education and discuss conservation, because that's also the name of the game, is educating the public.
Thank you, Mr. Graff. Last up, we have Ms. Duplessis. Ms. Duplessis, sorry. You are up next. 60 seconds. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd actually like just to elaborate more on what Mr. Graff was just saying. It was a perfect segue. I think that as a board member, it is our job to continue to educate and speak whenever possible, to bring awareness. Conservation is of utmost importance, and I think we can do that through education. We live in the desert, and we need to be mindful of that. But we also need to celebrate and continue to grow on all of the innovative options that we've already implemented and continue to look at implementing, which will help with that conservation through the reuse that we already are doing a great job with, whether it be through the CAGRD or the reuse water that we use out at Palo Verde and other areas, refiltering through the golf courses and open space. I think there's a lot of opportunity. And I think also going back to what we talked about earlier in the farming and looking at some alternatives there, it's important that we maintain the farmers in that crop. We need to be able to self-sustain here in Arizona, and we can do so but by limiting our infrastructure.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. What a thoughtful conversation we've had today. Now we will proceed to part 3 of our program, which is closing statements from the candidates. And we will do this in reverse order from the opening remarks, and each of you will have 1 minute. And we will begin with Daniel Cirignani Wood. You have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Thank you. Arizona voters should keep one number in mind when they cast 5 votes for members of the CAWCD board this November. It's 1.3 trillion. 1.3 trillion gallons is the amount of water we must target to save the Colorado River system upon which we all depend. The candidates that you vote for must be those who are suited for a matter of this gravity and a problem of this size. When the Colorado River Compact is renegotiated in 2026, we will not come out ahead on savvy diplomatic skills. We need to show leadership and to do what we need to do, technical leaders are required on this board, from hydrology, civil engineering, and supply chain, as well as law and others. I urge every voter to look closely at all of the candidates, consider each one of us carefully. For more information on me, please find my website, 895is0.com.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Now we'll move on to Karen Peters. Give us your closing statement. You may begin.
Thank you so much. And thanks again to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum today. I've greatly appreciated the conversation. I think we all agree Arizonans are concerned about our water supplies, and they have good reason to be concerned. We are in uncharted territory. As we consider who are the right leaders to navigate the remainder of this decade and position us for the future, experience matters. I'm stepping up to contribute my deep experience and expertise in Arizona water issues, together with my track record of listening, asking the right questions, and building consensus, are needed right now. This is no time for on-the-job training. If elected, I would hit the ground running. For more, check out my website, karenpeters.info, and please vote Karen Peters for CAWCD.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. And now we will hear closing statements from Amanda Monize. 60 seconds.
Thank you. So again, my name is Amanda Monize, and I'm running for this position because I'm concerned about Arizona's future. We talk about experience and having expertise and leadership, but yes, we've had that for a very long time, and we find ourselves in dire straits in a water crisis that seems to need more expertise and leadership. I don't tout the fact that I haven't been in water before, but I do know policy and I do know project management. I do know federal money. So I have that in my background. The operations of the board, they concern me because outside interests have influenced some on the board to put our tax dollars into places that don't benefit us as a taxpayer. This position is first and foremost to represent tax dollars that are given by the taxpayer. And I pledge to represent you as a taxpayer of Maricopa County and protect our Colorado River water as we go forward to make sure that we have a future here in Arizona and conserve that future for future generations. Again, I'm Amanda Monize, and I hope I can have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Monize. Now we will hear closing statement from Cory Mishkin. Mr. Mishkin, you're up. You have 1 minute. Thanks.
Thank you. So the good news is I'm the only Cory on the entire ballot, so that's easy to remember. I want you to know I grew up in agriculture. We had a feedlot, a cotton farm. My family's been involved in development for a long time here in the state of Arizona. I've seen a lot of growth. I've also realized that today we use the same amount of water as we did in 1957. And every year since 1980, Arizona has reduced its amount of water that it uses. We have really good, sound water policy. That doesn't mean that we don't have challenges ahead. That doesn't mean we don't need to focus, but it does mean that we're on a good footing. We know we live in a desert. We're prepared for a moment like this. And now how do we move forward? And more importantly, how do we take the vision of the next 50 years to make sure that this valley is as great for us as it, or for our children as it was for us? I invite you to check out more at my website, Cory, C-O-R-Y, for cap.com. Again, Cory for cap. And I'm the only Cory on your ballot. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we will hear from Ben Graff. Ben, your closing statement, 1 minute.
Thank you. Let me again thank the League of Women Voters. This has been a phenomenal format. I hope that we've come across as clear as terms of the advantage of the experience that I've had on the board. I hope that I've earned my reelection and your vote for another 6 years. But no matter how the election turns out, because there are 5 seats open, there's going to be new members on the board. And so I want to close by emphasizing something that's very important to me. This nonpartisan board has functioned during my last 6 years as just that. We have individuals of all parties, of all political backgrounds, and we're all focused on Arizona's water future. I've been amazingly proud of this board. And quite frankly, I just want to say I've been very proud of this debate today. All candidates have had and emulated the way our board functions today. This has been an incredibly cordial debate, and this is exactly what you will see on the board. Please vote for Ben Graff, electbengraff.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will hear from Shelby Duplessis. Your closing statement.
Yes, thank you again. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for having us all here today. It was very well run and I was impressed. I didn't know how this was going to work, having a debate, so to say, on Zoom. So very appreciative of that. I think that we need to recap today that it is the most important vote on the ballot right now to make sure that we keep experts on the board, those that want to work together collaboratively. I will do just that. I will listen, I'll continue to learn, and I'll collaborate as I've done in my business over the last 20 years. I just received Business Woman of the Year award from Phoenix Business Journal, and I've done that through relationships and through that collaboration. I will utilize my civil engineering degree and background and 29 years of experience in civil engineering to bring that value to the board. I ask for your vote today to help me get on the board to be able to work collaboratively with the entire board in all of the challenges we're seeking. My website, shelbyforcap.com, SHELBYFORCAP.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we will hear from Alexandra Arboleda. Your closing statement.
Yes, my name is Alexandra Arboleda. I tell people you don't have to pronounce it, just remember double A. I would really like to thank the League of Women Voters. This has been an extraordinary debate, and also to thank my fellow candidates here for your commitment to public service. This is an unpaid job that we are all want to serve on, and you know, I think it's really remarkable, all of the people who are putting forth their time to run. I'm uniquely qualified, an experienced leader, a fiscally sound policy advocate. I have been involved in development of the DCP and the 500+ plan, diversification of our energy portfolio to include solar energy. I helped develop the conservation programs, and the water quality standards brought stakeholders together to develop the system use agreement. I have a track record of working with agriculture, cities, developers, industry to come up with creative and common sense solutions to our challenges. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And we are moving on to our final closing statement. Ylenia Aguilar, you're up.
Yes, thank you very much, League of Women Voters and Jody, for this opportunity. Again, my name is Ylenia Aguilar. I have 6 years of leadership experience on an elected board. The school board is also nonpartisan, and I have proven record of working across party lines for the greater good of the community. In the past 6 years, with my fellow board members, we have managed and operated a budget, including federal and state funds, to ensure the success of our students and our families that we're serving. I have managed a crisis, and I am the only one currently running who has experience managing a crisis. I am confident in my ability to listen, pay attention, research, and work collaboratively with my fellow board members to ensure the best outcome for those who we will serve. As a result, we will ensure water for all Arizonans. I will take my leadership experience and ability to work across party lines to secure and protect the Colorado River and ensure water for all Arizonans. I am the only one with if Arizonans can trust me with their most valuable treasure, their children, they can trust me with their most valuable resource, water. Thank you. Vote Ylenia Aguilar.
Thank you. Thank you to all of the candidates for your participation, and to the audience for your attention. And thank you to the dozens and dozens of League volunteers who got us to that point. The League invites you to explore vote411.org to learn more about the elections, candidates, and ballot measures. And remember, your vote is your voice. Election day is Tuesday, November 8th, ending at 7 p.m. The League of Women Voters encourages every voter to get informed and vote all the way down the ballot. For information on how to finish your ballot, go to vote411.org. Thank you so much, candidates, the League of Women Voters, the audience. I think we can all be really proud of ourselves today. We'll hear from our leader.
Thank you so much, Jody and Candace. Thank you, candidates, for joining the League of Women Voters. Thank you, Andrea and Gretchen, one of our youngest members in the League, who are amazing in helping put this together. We ask you, if you did not complete a response to vote 411, then your voters are not hearing from you. So please make sure you're responding to the Vote 411 questions. So you have more than 1 minute to answer most of the questions. So please do that as soon as possible. If you would like to get the link to respond, please email us and I'll put the email in the chat and we'll get it to you as soon as possible. Thank you all, and thank you, audience, for joining us and your patience in allowing us to go a little past the time that we had allocated. Bye, everybody.